Going for Water by Robert Frost. So the themes explored here are journeys and childhood experiences. Going for water. The well was dry beside the door, and so we went with pail and can, across the fields behind the house, to seek the brook, if still it ran. Not loth to have excuse to go, because the autumn eve was fair, though chill because the fields were ours, and by the brook our woods were there. We ran as if to meet the moon that slowly dawned behind the trees, the barren boughs without the leaves, without the birds, without the breeze. But once within the wood we paused, like gnomes that hid us from the moon, ready to run to hiding new, with laughter when she found us soon. Each led on other a staying hand, to listen ere we dared to look, and in the hush we joined to make, we heard we knew, we heard the brook. A note as from a single place, a slender tinkling fall that made now drops that floated on the pool, like pearls and now a silver blade. Relevant contextual information. So, this poem was written as an apology to his wife, to remind her of a moment they shared as children. The poem describes a brook named Hare Rock that was found near Frost's home. Going for Water was first published in A Boy's Will in 1913, and it figured at the end of the first three sections, and it was one of only two poems, the other being Reluctance Not to Have a Gloss. Many of the poems in the volume like many of the poems in the volume, it is set in a natural landscape. Moreover, the images it presents, the brook, the woods, and the hearing of soft music, are typically Frostian, both in their recurrence in Frost's canon and in their symbolic meaning. The situation in the poem is also one of Frost's favourites. The speaker tells of how he and another person were once forced to go in search of a brook because their well was empty. Their quest affords them the opportunity to enter the woods behind their house and to stop there, caught up with a feeling of exhilaration at the sight of a moonlit sylvan scene. The experience is characterised as ecstatic. The couple join the woods in making the hush, which allows them to hear soft music coming from the brook. Like Directive, the poem alludes to the search for a spring, prefiguring the later poem's more explicit reference to the archetype of regeneration through initiatory rites. In addition, Going for Water could also be a metaphor for Frost's conception of poetical inspiration, as the poet himself derived it from his more complex theory of the sound of sense. The image then would be that of a poet whose auditory imagination is triggered by sounds that he later transforms into fully formed images. So, the title of the poem and the summary. The title of the poem, Going for Water, sounds like a mundane task, something routine, but yet it takes on connotations of being some sort of means of escape and enjoyment for the boy and his companion, and connotes a sense of adventure. The children being together allows them to actually enjoy this experience, and the repetition of collective terms such as we, our, and us reinforces the connection between the children. The speaker never refers to himself in a singular term, it's always plural throughout this. Rhyme, rhythm, structure, and form. So this is an alternating rhyme scheme with the second and fourth lines rhyming. It is a childlike nursery rhyme sound that comes from the poem, reinforcing the reflection on the childhood experience, the childlike joy that the boy and the girl are experiencing. The structure, there are 6 quatrains, and it's setting out clearly each stage of their journey. The rhythm is iambic tetrameter, which gives it a nursery rhyme feel to it, emphasising one of the key themes, the theme of childhood, and the enjambment builds up a taste of the children's excitement or anticipation when in the woods and drives the story of the poem forwards, drives the narrative forwards. Symbolism. The imagery of escapism in the forest, without the birds, without the breeze. Here we can see that the boy and the girl realise that there's a sense of freedom or escapism that they have in the woods. They realise they can hide from their responsibilities and the mundane reality that awaits them at home, and laugh and play in the woods. Now let's have a look at the tone. So stanzas 1 and 2 are enthusiastic. The children are excited to get away from mundane tasks and retreat into nature. Then in stanza 3, they're carefree as they lose themselves in the excitement of their adventure. Stanza 4, it becomes exhilarating as the natural environment becomes something fantastical, and there's all these fairy tale-like qualities added on to the language used. And in stanza 5, there's a sense of anticipation as they near their destination. And in the final stanza, stanza 6, they are still entranced by nature, but there's this acknowledgement that their adventure must end and they have to return to reality soon. Now let's look at the narrative point of view. So this is told in the past tense to really emphasise that this is from an enthusiastic, childlike perspective. It's first person plural point of view to emphasise the unity of the speaker and his companion. Note that it never uses the I voice, but rather always collective terms, we, us, and our, and this really emphasises the enthusiasm and the unity between the two. Now let's look at poetic techniques. So in the first line we have well was dry beside the door. So we have alliteration and we have assonance. The alliteration could be symbolic of their duty, their life, their chores, the fact that they need to escape from what they're currently doing. Then we have we went on the next line, which emphasises their enthusiasm for the task that they're doing. There's an enthusiastic, excited tone, almost jubilant, really, and this is highlighted further through the assonance throughout the poem that mimics the joy of the children. Door, so, across, brook, not loth to go. Note all the repetition of the O's, all the repetition of quite a lot of vowels, actually. Um, and it's quite a playful, colloquial tone, conversational narration of events. The collective pronouns such as we and are really important because it emphasises the unity between the children and their lust for adventure. Then we have the use of prepositions across and behind in the third line that add to the adventurous feel of the poem by highlighting the activeness of their journey. Then we have the sense of mystery, this idea of the unknown, adding to this feeling of adventure when we have to seek the brook if still it ran. And the verb choice seek emphasises their desire for some sort of playful escapade. And then we have the semicolon, brook if still it ran, that emphasises the stanza break. And then we have this reluctance in not loth to have excuse to go. And they're eager to leave their daily routine or the chores and enjoy nature. But they're reluctant in a sense to have to actually eventually return to this reality. Um, because the autumn eve was fair, though chill because the fields were ours, the parenthesis of though chill is important because it indicates that the scene is not completely fair, that it's not completely enjoyable, that there is a harshness to what they're experiencing in nature. And then we have the word because, which gives the sense of ownership. Being in this rural setting, feeling content, comfortable, and safe, and you can see that continued from because to the fields were ours, that there's this sense of comfort in isolation, especially through this ownership of that person and the personal pronoun there that really emphasizes it, or rather the collective pronoun that emphasizes it. Then we have the alliteration of by the brook, and this creates this peaceful, serene sound of the brook. Then we have our, and the collective pronoun again, teamed with the alliteration of woods were there. And the alliteration emphasises the reassuring, comforting feeling. Then we have we ran as if to meet the moon. And the collective pronoun we emphasises the sense of unity. There's a carefree tone imbued in these lines. And then we have the simile, which creates a magical, otherworldly feeling to the poem, setting, or the poem or the setting, and the speaker's experiences. The alliteration and the personification creates a melodic sound that emphasises their joy, their enthusiasm. Then we have that slowly dawned behind the trees, the barren boughs without the leaves, without the birds, without the breeze. And again, you can see that use of assonance throughout that emphasises their excitement at going on this adventure. And we also have the alliteration of barren boughs, birds, and breeze, emphasising the harshness of this rural landscape. The depiction of the harsh landscape, though, is juxtaposed to the children's reaction to it, the fact that it does bring them joy. Then the bough, obviously a bough is a main branch of a tree. The repetition of without is really important because it does depict this landscape as something sinister and barren. It's bereft of life and vitality. However, their joy at being with one another, their familiarity with each other and with the scene that they're experiencing, allows them to enjoy this experience. They're not afraid of their surroundings, and there is joy to be had in isolation, in a rural environment. Within the wood we paused, and you've got more alliteration emphasising their joyous reaction despite the barren and sinister landscape. The caesura here slows the pace and reinforces the playful interaction with the woods and the moon. Then we have the simile like gnomes, which is childish but adds to the fairy-like fantasy element of the adventure that the children are going on. And a child's imagination is evoked here. It really emphasises that this is told from the perspective of a child because of all this fantastical imagery. Then we have ready to run, and the alliteration of this, teamed with laughter when, and the alliteration there, emphasises their vitality and energy, their restlessness. And the enjambment between the lines speeds up the pace and reinforces this. And then we have the personification of the moon finding them. So the idea of playing hide and seek with the moon highlights the capacity of the child's imagination, and again emphasises the viewpoint of the speaker, and clearly emphasises that theme of childhood and the enjoyment to be sought from childhood. Then we have this tone of anticipation in this next stanza as they near their destination. Each laid on another a staying hand, to listen ere we dared to look, and in the hush we joined to make, we heard, we knew, we heard the brook. The conveying the connection between the two children through each laid on other a staying hand. The sense of unity, their relationship for them is as thrilling as their experiences with nature. Then we have listen and look, and we can see that he wants to fully experience, immerse himself, enjoy the setting, and appreciate the sensory pleasures, the use of sights and sounds. Then the hush and the we heard, the silence allows them to immerse themselves in nature and fully appreciate sounds that they wouldn't hear if they hadn't been so quiet. And then also the collective pronoun emphasises their unity as they share the joy of this experience together. Then we have the caesura after we heard. The pause and in fact the repetition of we heard creates a sense of realisation that they're just about to pass time, that they're actually only out to pass some time. There's a sense of discovery, and they're pausing to pick out the sounds. And they're enjoying pausing and picking out the sounds and really drawing out this seemingly monotonous task. And the repetition emphasises their anticipation and excitement upon reaching their destination. Then we have the very melodic, musical nature of the falling water, shown through the choice of diction note. Then we have the metaphor of single place. It depicts the setting as a mystical place, emphasises the isolation of the speaker and his companion, reinforced through the silence and the stillness of the surrounding area. So much so that small, subtle sounds are distinct and evident to the speaker and his companion. Then we have slender tinkling, and the onomatopoeia and the adjective show his appreciation for the pleasantness of this natural setting, the subtle sounds of nature, and they are deliberately silent so they can fully appreciate these. Then we have the tonal shift in now drops that floated on the pool. He's still entranced by nature, but he acknowledges that he must return soon to reality. The transition of autumn changing into winter could possibly be evoked from this, especially when we have the idea of the silver blade and the connotations of this possibly being frozen. We have the assonance and verb choice floated, emphasising this peaceful, calm, serene atmosphere or setting. And then we have the simile like pearls, showing the beauty of the droplets and the speaker's appreciation of the natural environment, this beautiful natural image. And then the silver blade, the metaphor here for the description of the brook, it's portrayed as something elegant and crisp, the crisp sheen of the surface and possibly frozen. And then finally, the themes or messages explored. So the speaker or speakers have a connection or appreciation of nature. There is a childlike joy and excitement throughout the poem, making an enjoyable and exciting adventure out of a normally mundane task. And these children relish it. They see it as an opportunity for escape. Then there's the isolation of individuals, which is seen as a positive thing, a means for connecting with nature. Imagination entrances them and increases their capacity for enjoyable, meaningful experiences.